From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, and real therapists. You can submit your questions anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. During these intros, I always like to take a headline from the news and make a joke about it, but I've been watching Fox News all week, and there's just nothing to report on.
There's nothing going on.
It's been the slowest news cycle ever. Oh well, maybe next week. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah.
And now, broadcasting from the churn, that guy's Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some Pod Therapy.
Weird, man. There's just like literally nothing.
There's nothing.
Like it's such a slow news cycle
Nothing
that they're down
happened.
to just telling us about discounts on your local groceries. So
Yeah, and it was National Pancake Day.
that's important, though. I'm glad that kind of stuff's being
So
covered.
that was-
yeah. I like how pancakes are now allowed to be literally anything. And, like, this is very America of us, which segues very nice into the Sober October topic of eating.
Yes.
So, like, I took my son to breakfast yesterday morning, and
I am really curious where the statement "pancakes are allowed to be anything" is going.
red velvet pancakes. Red velvet pancakes. We all know that's not breakfast. Red velvet pancakes is clearly dessert. There's like chocolate chip
Do you
pancakes.
think regular pancakes are healthy?
He does.
Wait a minute.
I think this answers a lot. I think that
think
really
plain
explains
I
a
pancakes
have
lot.
are
a lot
healthy?
to learn this month. I feel like there's going to be a lot of illusions.
They
all
are.
makes
that are
sense.
shattered. I guess that is why they're called cakes. I mean, okay, a lot's starting to make sense.
I think you're just discovering what pancakes are.
Let's introduce our guests.
Yeah.
We have some friends in the studio who joined us for more of the Patreon segment, but they're here with us. We've got Shay. How you doing, Shay?
Good.
And we've got our hubby, Andrew.
Hey, what's going on?
So both of you folks are from Utah, which we've already chided you over. And Andrew, you're a firefighter.
True.
And doing good work for the people. And Shay works for the dark side of the insurance markets,
Yes.
though she's very passionate about trying very hard to redeem that and saying that it is a nonprofit. and
It's the good dark side.
It's the better, we'll call it
It's
the
like
dark.
it's
yeah.
It's like when
Twilight.
Darth Vader threw the Emperor over. Like
right,
he
yeah.
turned back.
The moment where
He's-
there's like redemption.
there's good in him.
But like we don't forget that you
Right.
killed the entire Jedi school.
yeah.
Essentially, Shay, that's where I want to go with it.
Thank you.
young wing,
Yes,
Shayla.
I
So we'll
get
stick
those
that landing.
references 100%.
So this is going to be such a fun episode. If you guys are not already Patreons of the show, this is going to be the month that you want to do that. Not only can you join us and hear the Patreon conversation that we had with our guests and hear the postgame as well, but we are launching a really fun project this month. We're going to join Joe Rogan, some little-known comedian out there. Apparently he podcasts.
Saying
Who?
joining him
Yeah,
makes
almost
it sound
sounds like he's with
yeah,
us.
like we're collaborating with Joe Rogan.
So this works better when you don't tear apart my subtle marketing things. Sometimes it works. Remember the Dr. Drew thing?
I don't know. I don't know if that worked.
Yeah.
I don't know if worked is the right way.
Yeah, we've been endorsed by Drew.
Right,
Okay.
okay.
And Joe Rogan, though he doesn't even know who we are, we're joining him. So our ally
right.
and partner in this project, Mr. Rogan, does
Your
a
lack
project.
of shame just makes me
Absolutely.
so uncomfortable.
Oh yeah, no, this is look me in the eyes when I do it. It's hot. All right, so Joe Rogan has this bit he does Sober October, where apparently I think he smokes literally every day, all day, and he's like dropping acid all the time. This is when he sobers up for the month to regain his senses of who he is and where he is. But we're going to partner in that because, as you may have heard, Nick and I dabble in addictions treatment. And so we thought this would be a really fun month. And so not only are we going to be talking about it during our A blocks of the show this month, but we're also going to be doing a ton of stuff on Patreon because Nick is going to be the treating clinician and Jim is about to be the patient.
Yes. So
You get to live out your dream, buddy.
So what is your goal?
My goal, so sobriety, we have to define what that is.
Well, yeah, because
for
we're not
everybody.
really doing sobriety.
Right, yeah. So we're treating this month as an opportunity to ask ourselves, okay, what does it look like whenever a person has developed a dependency on something, or informally maybe, in my case, an addiction to something, where you kind of use something that you probably shouldn't in disproportion, right? And so for some folks that they drink too much, for some folks they smoke too much. In my case, I could tone down on the food stuff, okay? So eating healthily and not eating too much is what I'm going to be aiming for during October. So my version of sobriety is going to end up being like a certain amount of calories and a certain amount of nutrition, which is going to be a little bit blurry, but that's okay because a lot of people don't know this. Overeaters Anonymous is one of the 12-step fellowships, and we absolutely consider eating a very important part of like what we're doing when we're treating addiction generally.
Right. So as we walk through this process, for those of you at home, you can identify some sort of change that you want to make. So it doesn't necessarily have to be food related or alcohol related or drug related. It could be something like if you want to get into exercise. It's almost kind of like a New Year's resolution, only we're going to science this.
Yes.
We're going to science the hell out of it.
That's right. We're not going to wish on that stupid ball. We're going to get this one right.
So we're going to be a little bit more methodical. Now,
yes.
For those of you at home, one thing that's really important is that you have to have a well-defined goal. So if you haven't listened to it yet, go back and listen to the episode that I did with our friend Brian on goal setting.
Yeah, SMART goals.
SMART goals.
Yeah.
And so listen to that, and that will help you identify how you want to set a goal so that it's actionable. That you're going to take action. So it has to be well-defined. So I'm going to ask you, Jim, how well-defined is your goal as of right now?
I do. Okay, the most well-defined I can be. So the general spirit that I'm chasing here is health. And nutritional health, right? Okay, fine. But unlike alcohol, where a person could say, hey, my goal is to not consume a drop of alcohol for the month, let's call this an addiction, okay? So for the purposes of our treatment month, we're going to treat me as if I have a food addiction, okay? Which is a real thing, folks. That's a real thing. So the thing about food addiction that makes it different than something like a methamphetamine addiction or heroin addiction or alcohol addiction, you can stop using heroin and never use it again and survive, right? Whereas food, you have to eat. And sex addiction is similar in this way, that those who identify as having sex addiction, it is not our clinical desire that they become abstinent from all sexuality. It's that we want them to define what is healthy sexuality for them and what is unhealthy sexuality for them, in their own opinion, and help them scale away from that. So in our food addiction work, we have to do that same thing, which is what you're asking about, how do you scale that in? For me, because I still need to eat in order to survive, apparently, I am setting a calorie goal daily.
And do you have the goal?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going for 1,200 calories a day. Okay, and that was based on some analysis.
1,200?
1,200. Is that too high?
That's too low.
That's too low?
Yeah.
You think I should come up?
Yeah, probably.
Let's do 2,500.
Jacob, stay out of this.
What are you guys talking about? 1,200 is fine.
I feel like that was the right number.
This is my co-host. I need him to survive.
Let's go to 2,500 to be safe.
1,200 is like the standard.
Do I need to? Is this
lowest.
like Price is Right?
Okay, I eat like 900 to 1,000 calories a day most days.
Yeah. Well, let's do the
1,200 is
Jacob
fine.
diet. But wait a minute. How much of that is
hold on.
whiskey?
Oh, all of it.
I haven't eaten solid food.
No.
He eats 900 to 1,000 calories, but he consumes 3,000.
No, I mean, I eat like one good-sized meal a day.
Okay.
And that's my food for the day.
Okay.
Okay, but you're only getting 900 calories in that one meal?
Do you
Yeah,
practice
usually.
OMAD?
900 to
Is that
1,000
what you're
calories,
doing?
somewhere in that neighborhood.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah.
So I'll meet you guys in the
that
middle
seems
on this.
awful.
I'll change it to what, 1,400? Is that 1,500? Is that a solid number?
Well, the standard
Here's-
American
honestly-
diet is 2,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm
Here's
coming
what I
under
would probably
that, right?
do. Yes. If you're okay. I want to preface this by saying I'm a licensed alcohol and drug counselor, so I have no idea what the hell I'm talking about.
Yeah, no.
But
as everybody should
No.
assume at all times during the show.
That being said,
Yeah.
what I would recommend
Okay.
is going online. There's like calorie calculators where you're putting in your current weight, your age, your activity level, and you figure out how much your body burns just to stay alive.
This is
just
getting
on average,
extremely
right?
complicated.
So it's like
Hold
your
on.
BMR versus your TDEE.
Right. Yeah.
Hell,
Exactly.
I have
Right?
KFC. That's all I
Okay,
have.
so I guess for the listener, this is a really good example of we need to do more research in this because I guarantee right now, if you just decided October 1st, you're going down to 1,200 calories a day, you're going to fail.
Okay.
There's no way you're going to be able to
All
do
right,
that.
so I
'Cause
have-
how many
Not
calories do you
realistic.
take in right now?
I don't want to talk about that.
I'm guessing at least
How many's in this
at least
cup?
3,000.
Yeah, it's probably between 2 and 3.
Oh, it's definitely over 2. It's definitely over 2,500.
Okay,
if
so
had
like
to
I
guess.
have this thingy called MyFitnessPal.
Yep.
And in that I had to type in like all of my stuff, and it recommends 1,540 calories.
Okay.
And that was based on weight and goal. Like I said, a goal weight. And my goal weight was to lose 40 pounds. And that's over the course of all time. That's not in a month.
1,500 is fine.
Yeah,
I think that's probably
it said 1,540 if your goal is to lose.
I think 1,200 is also
2 pounds per
fine,
week.
but I think 1,500
Yeah,
is
my
fine.
fitness pal will never recommend anything under 1,200 calories.
Okay.
So it's always set for
So
that.
to go back to your question, I'm going to edit all this out.
No, you're not.
The answer to your question, Nick, my real tangible SMART goal, which is specific and is measurable. We know if I'm getting to it. A is for attainable.
Yeah.
It's attainable. That's a realistic goal, which is what you just did. Is you assisted me from an unattainable goal to a realistic one, which is the next letter. R is for realistic, I think.
Yeah.
And T is time bound because it's
Yep.
a daily goal. We can check every day. So my SMART goal for this activity is going to be 1,500 calories, right on the
Okay.
money.
All right.
That's my daily
Now,
calorie intake.
if you wanted the other way to do it too, is you've got your set, but for anybody at home, another way to do it is you can decrease it throughout the month.
Right.
So your first week, you can knock it down to like 1,900, then go to 1,800 the second week, 1,600. You can do it that way as well.
For me personally, I think I'm better setting it at 15 and going for it. The weaning strategy doesn't work for me in my personal mentality. So like,
That's good to
and
know.
I've met people with alcohol treatment. I think we've both met people with alcohol treatment that try that same effect, where they're like, "Hey, listen, I don't want to cold turkey this."
Right.
And if they're detoxing for medical
That's
reasons,
different.
that's a very different thing. But if they're just like, well, I think I'm just going to slow it down and scale it back, a lot of times we'll tell them that probably doesn't work, right? Generally, we just don't see a ton of evidence that would work because you're still tingling the same parts of your brain and we're not instigating real life change. So I'm going to go all in for the month of October, 1,500 calories, my man. That's my daily goal. That's my more specific one. And then I have some secondary goals, like it'd be nice to lose this much weight, or I don't want those 15 calories to be donuts, right? Like I want them to be like healthy things.
So on that, you can set your macros.
Yeah, that thing.
So your macros are your protein, your carbohydrates, and your fats.
Yeah.
So you have to have depending on what your goal is, what you're trying to do, you have to adjust those
Okay.
to fit your goal.
The goal is 1,500.
Well, no. As far as like losing weight. So like, and everybody's body is different. Like everybody's body responds to these differently. So
Okay.
like for my goal, back like a year ago, I was trying to gain weight. I was trying to bulk up.
So we should partner on
So I
this.
had to.
If we just eat all of our meals together,
what I'm
I'll
getting
just
at-
give you what I've got.
It doesn't work that way. But what I'm getting at is that you kind of have to play around with it and figure out how your body responds to
Okay,
it.
so
Because
there's
it's
some
it's not like you need this percentage has to be carbs, this percentage has to be protein, this percentage has to be fat. You have to figure out how your body reacts.
So I want to keep it super simple because, for Sober
Right.
October, we're not nutritional, experts, but we are people that can help you make a change in your life using mental health techniques and quit something that you feel compelled to do. So 1,500 calories holds me accountable to not overeating. Even if I'm not necessarily filling those 1,500 with salad and broccoli, I will not overeat if it's 1,500, which is essentially the goal.
Right.
Okay, so 1,500 is my goal. What's your
Cool.
goal for the month?
Oh, I'm not doing this.
Okay.
Yes.
This is going to be great. I'm just going to guinea pig.
No, I'm going to eliminate added sugar.
Okay. So cutting back on the sugar stuff.
Yeah. So
What's in that cup
when
right there, fella?
It is the 29th
No, it's
of
October.
September.
They're
so
hearing this in
don't worry about
October.
that.
No, you're right. I'm totally living by that. I'm having chili tonight.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
And this is what's funny, and we should actually talk about this, because this is a phenomenon that happens a lot. And when David was here last week, the same thing we talked about this is
Right.
when you are setting a goal and you have a start date in the future, that means your body or your mind naturally goes to, well, I got to get this in.
Oh, God, that's totally happening to me.
Yeah.
Ever since I agreed to this, I have been struggling.
Yeah.
Like, it's bad.
Yeah.
Like, my family's like, oh, should we eat this or that? And I'm like, well, let's get the worst possible thing.
Exactly.
Because October's going to be a bad month.
I'm eliminating added sugar. So I can eat stuff that has sugar in it, like fruits, stuff like that, right?
Okay.
But I'm not going to add sugar to anything,
Okay.
including like snacks or like cookies, stuff like that. I'm not going to do
You don't pour sugar in your
Right.
cookies?
that. No.
That's how the only way I eat my cookies is with a little jar of sugar and I scoop it up.
Jesus.
I think I have a lot of room to grow here.
This is going to be life.
I'm going to learn a
altering for you.
lot. But no, it's interesting because what you just said is totally true.
Yeah. So the last couple days, my
Yeah.
mind has just been focusing.
Gosh.
Hyper focusing on
Yep.
sugar.
Yep.
I got to get in as much sugar as I can because on October 1st, I'm done.
Yep. We've already got people that are listening to the show on our Patreon. Cindy Ash wrote us in a comment on the last episode and said, guys, it's Halloween that month. And like, I'm really
damn it, it
struggling
is.
because she's like, I have 3 children. Like, I am going to have whatever I want. So she's
Okay.
like, she's already honing it in though. She's like, I'm going to avoid Reese's and like, I'm going to get through that month.
So this
Because
is
it's the last day of October.
Exactly.
So you can just pivot to November and then go nuts.
So this is actually a really good segue into our topic today. So
yes.
for every episode, our A block is going to be some sort of topic dealing with what we're doing, right?
Yeah, and I'm going to be the patient, essentially, and you're going to ultimately use the addiction treatment models that you've worked on and bring that into this particular space. And real quick, before we dive into that, I want to say 2 things.
Okay.
One, you mentioned Data Scoop, and so for the general audience, we tried to add an update into the episode descriptions, both on Patreon and in our main feed. Data's son did go to rehab.
Awesome.
And so, yeah, that same day, only a couple of hours later, Data and I were texting back and forth, and his son did go check into the
Great.
rehab that same day. So he is
Good.
safe, everything's okay, and thanks for all the good vibes. Folks were really, reaching out to him, and so he's very appreciative of that. So that's the first announcement. And the second one, guys, if you're not already a Patreon, this is the time. And this is not just a shameless plug to get your dollar. I don't really give a shit. This is an opportunity to experience a real addiction expert treating a real person who's trying to have real life change. Nick has dove into this, and it's funny because you and I were chit-chatting about how much you've prepared for October. And you're not just going into our little treasure trove of worksheets. You're writing your own.
No, yeah, I'm writing my own material. So, like, all the stuff that we're going to do today, everything's going to be free for every listener. It's
Right.
going to be all on the podcast.
Yes.
But as far as the stuff that I'm writing, that we're going to be posting on
Because we're going to have homework that's going to go
Right.
on the Patreon, and
So,
my answers are going to go on the Patreon.
There's
too.
a lot of stuff, too, that we're probably not going to get to in the show just for time reasons. But, like, what I've got put together today, as of right now, it's 7 pages long. So
Woohoo!
it's pretty in-depth. And the topic that we're going to get into is identifying vulnerability.
Okay.
Right. So you had mentioned triggers when we were talking earlier on the phone.
Right.
So triggers are kind of a part of that, but it's not all encompassing. So they're not exactly one and the same. So for the listeners, what a trigger is, there's a saying in neurobiology that neurons that fire together get wired together.
Yeah.
Right? So if 2 things are constantly occurring and they're occurring together, our brain creates a connection, a link between those 2, so that when we experience one, it automatically sets off the other one.
Right.
And this is a shortcut for evolution.
Yeah.
Right. So we don't have to continue to relearn the same lesson.
Yeah.
We begin to associate things together, and it allows our brain to become more efficient.
Right. Eating that food tastes good.
Yeah.
Eat more of that food, and now whenever you're in the presence of that food, you feel good even before you eat it.
Right.
Because you're wiring now to
Or
have some
I
kind of
ate
euphoria.
this purple-colored berry, and then I started vomiting for 3 days.
Don't eat that purple covered berry.
Right. So
again.
now when I see that,
I'm
my
triggered
body reacts
against
to
it. Got it.
exactly.
Mhm.
Right. So that's awesome for survival. For evolution, this is really good. However, this becomes a problem when we're talking about trying to break those connections.
Right.
Right. So when you have a connection that you need to sever,
Yeah.
like, so for example, sugar is amazing.
Yeah.
Right? When I eat sugar, I get this kind of sugar buzz. I get this good feeling. I have energy. It's
Right.
exciting, right? So whenever I see Dunkin' Donuts,
Yeah.
my brain automatically goes to, a donut would be really good right now.
Yeah.
And my mouth even kind of starts to water a little bit, so I start getting a physical reaction
It
to
is so
it.
invisible. And that's what's weird about triggers is like it's one way to talk about it and be like, yeah, I desire alcohol when I'm at the bar. Yeah, no crap. But like how invisible a lot of these triggers are, that like how you just described it. If a buddy calls you and is like, hey, do you want to get together? It's like, yeah, let's go overeat sushi. Like
Right.
instantly it feels like that's what we need to do. And now I'm really excited about it. Like,
Right.
we're having pal time. And it's like, we didn't have to go that route.
And
But
here's-
like that's where it goes.
Here's the other thing, too, with triggers, is that there are triggers that can be very direct and connected directly. So my example with the sugar is a direct connection.
Yeah.
There's also indirect triggers, so things that maybe absolutely have nothing to do with each other,
Okay.
but because of my habits have always been put together.
Oh, okay.
Like one has always been with the other.
Oh my God.
So this is where we get into, me hearing a song reminds me of this one time, right?
Dude.
And so because those two always happen together, I can't experience one without experiencing the other.
I have so many of those.
I do too. The example I always used to use is when I smell the inside of a paper bag, like a paper sack, a grocery bag,
Yeah.
I feel nauseous.
Oh, because that's what you'd throw up into.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Because when I was a kid, this was back before we had the plastic sacks. You know,
right.
Like when we got groceries, you had paper bags, right? And so whenever I was homesick from school,
You'd throw up into that.
Mom would set one of those paper bags by the couch, so every time I would throw up, I'd throw up into that. So now that smell is linked in my brain. Those those neurons fired together, now they're wired together, and that's just the reaction that my body has.
Okay.
So there's different ways of breaking these connections. So that's kind of what a trigger is.
Yeah.
But we're going to speak more broadly into just identifying vulnerability.
Okay.
So if
vulnerability for a relapse or to do the behavior you're trying to stop.
So we're going to talk about behaviors as being like the undesirable behavior.
Okay.
So we've got a behavior that we want, that's our goal,
Yeah.
and we have this undesirable behavior that's the opposite of that. So your desired behaviors, you want to eat healthy, you want to
eat less.
Eat below a certain calorie count.
Yes.
The undesirable behavior then would be your habits, right? Your habit of eating.
Right.
And this has become very difficult because you've established a pattern, and it's very, very difficult to break patterns, right? But that's ultimately what you're going to have to do.
Wow.
And in order to do this, it's going to become very important that you identify your vulnerable spots.
Okay.
Right? So
Get
the
ahead of it.
times,
Anticipate
so
where you might
need
fail.
to be able to identify what are going to be the most difficult obstacles. When am I going to be most vulnerable to returning to old patterns of behavior?
This is good. Yeah.
Right. So
I'm excited for this.
So there's a bunch of different ways that we can do this. So first, I would start off with the externals.
Yeah.
All right. So the externals, we're going to talk about places, people, and situations or circumstances.
Okay.
All right. So those are all external outside of you.
Okay.
Right. So identifying places. So what would you say would be some of the places in which you recognize that you're going to be most vulnerable to the undesirable behavior? So I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm talking about eliminating added sugar.
Right.
I know right now going to a movie.
Oh, yeah.
A movie theater. That's going to be a situation of high vulnerability because I always do the same thing. I always get popcorn and M&Ms and I mix them together.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of that sweet and salty taste.
Yeah, that's really smart.
Yeah.
You're triggering me right now.
I know.
You're really bad at this.
I know. Terrible.
This is the same thing you used to do in the rehab.
Yeah, I
you were
know,
like,
yeah.
some of that meth is so good, isn't it? The blue stuff? Yeah, you had the blue stuff? Yeah. You shouldn't have that anymore.
Yeah, stop
doing that meth. No, but I follow your question.
Right. So that's something I have to prepare for. Am I going to not go to a movie in October?
Goodness.
No, I'm probably going to go see something. But
Right.
I have
identify
to
it. Get ahead of it.
I have to be. It's basically think of like okay, so you're a football fan. Think of being like a football coach.
Yeah.
How important it is that you know your team's weaknesses.
Anticipate it. Yeah.
Right. Because if you know your weaknesses, you know your opponent knows.
Okay.
And your opponent's going to attack those weaknesses.
Okay.
So your opponent in this situation is your old pattern of behavior.
Right.
Right. So you're
these are
naturally
externals.
yes.
So let me try to throw one on each one of those
Okay.
because I think I can do it off the top of my head. So the first one you said was places, like locations, physical locations,
Yep.
like your movie theater example.
Yep.
One of mine, okay, this is a good one. This is totally true. I think about this all the time. South Rainbow Boulevard. If I am on South Rainbow and I am passing Raisin Cane's and Carl's Jr. and all that stuff, and it's just like, well, why not? Because they're all on the right-hand side, and like I'm heading in that direction, and it's like, I just pop through really quick. So like I'm always really triggered right there. Like I get off the 215, I go down South Rainbow, and like there's just like 5 really quality places, and if I'm passing those locations, I am buzzing because I'm just like, well, maybe I should. No, I should. Don't do it, Jim. Like I have this whole like evil, good angel thing on my shoulder where they're like, don't do it, buddy. And I'm like, screw that. It's a superstar. And I got to have it. And then it's like, that gets me. So, okay, that's one. So that's a place that I'm triggered externally.
Right. Exactly. So kind of that old saying that lack of preparation leads to poor performance. Right.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to anticipate that. That's one of the biggest struggles that people trying to make changes, like whether it be a New Year's resolution or somebody who's trying to stay clean and sober.
They don't think about it.
Right. That's always how they get tripped up, is they don't plan ahead.
Right.
And they just walk blindly into these situations.
Right. It's one
And
thing
then
for me
they
to
get-
say, I want to stay under 1,500 calories. Fine.
Right.
But identify before you get into real life
Yes.
where you might fail. So
Right.
one is a place, and that
Yep.
place for me is a specific road
Right.
where
Next
I
one.
can be triggered.
People.
People that might trigger me to overindulge in food.
No, just people that are going to be, it's going to be high risk.
Okay.
Right? So it's going to increase your vulnerability to returning to old patterns of behavior.
Right.
And here's the thing that I always like to hint at, or I always like to make sure I explain to people, is because when we talk about this is always the one that I get the most resistance on. Because people interpret this as, well, I can't be around these people anymore, or these people are bad people. And no, that's not what we're talking about at all. These people are probably great people. They're
Right.
probably wonderful people. But we
Right.
have to be realistic and understand that when I'm around this type of person
I
or
have
this
to know.
person, I always seem to
Interesting.
blank. Like whenever you and I hang out outside of this podcast,
Yeah.
where are we?
Sushi.
Exactly.
And I was going to say you. I was going to say
Yes.
you're the problem. I think I know
No,
how to
no.
beat this.
Okay.
Good podcast, everybody. Take care. You
out.
guys have got it from here. I'm going to live my best life.
Now now you've misunderstood.
I'm back.
I'm not the problem.
Oh, okay. Because that's what it
It's-
felt like.
It's vulnerability.
Okay.
Right? Okay, so that leads to high vulnerability. So you have to now come up with a plan for how you're going to deal with that.
Okay.
Now, it could also be for me, if my goal is to eliminate added sugar,
Yeah.
I know the people that put me in a high vulnerable situation. One is my mother,
Okay.
because she's exactly like me, and she will put sugar on top of sugar.
Oh, okay.
Right? Like that's just how we grew up in the Midwest. It's like
Ah,
all sugar.
It's always there.
Right?
Okay.
So that's nothing against my mom. She's
No.
a wonderful woman, but I have to be able to
Just
kind of
acknowledge it.
understand.
And I think I'm following
right?
what you're saying, because like with places, I can choose to go home on a different road
Yes.
that maybe doesn't have the same stuff, so I can avoid that. But with people, I would still like to play golf or hang out with you, but I guess I would have to strategically structure that encounter to say, hey, I'm not available to do certain things like sushi or go to these orgies you're always asking me to go to. We're just gonna.
That has nothing to do with eating healthy. That's exercise.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So
It's cardio. There's that.
There's some healthy eating involved.
I was going to say, I learned at the museum there's only 36 calories in a spoonful of
Oh, geez.
really?
so you're good, very
fantastic.
low sugar.
Man, we almost got through this episode without the explicit tag.
Wow.
And there it goes.
There you go.
It's weird because anytime we record at level 9, we don't have to mark those explicit. It's weird. I wonder what the ingredient is.
Because you invited the weirdo from Utah.
He provokes us. He brings out the worst.
so third, situations.
I'm literally sitting over here reading a book. Just lead in to say horrible things.
That's the Jacob effect.
Third thing,
Yeah.
situations. So these are circumstances.
Oh,
right?
God.
Okay.
I've got one on the top of my head right now.
What is it?
Football.
Okay, great.
It's
Yes.
Sunday. I'm wearing my jersey, and
Yeah.
as soon as we wake up and it's like football time and the Panthers game is on, I have to have something. And it's like,
Yes.
got to get some chips and dip, got to get a beer. Like I gotta have that while I'm watching my game,
Yeah.
or I don't feel like I did it. Like,
Right.
it's so weird.
It's very foreign.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It doesn't feel natural. And that's one of the ways that you can determine whether or not you've become dependent on something is you remove it and you see what happens.
Wow.
So like for me, I kind of became very dependent on having popcorn, M&Ms, and soda
With
while
your movie.
at a movie.
Yeah.
So the first time going to a movie without that, it just felt weird. It
Yeah.
didn't feel right.
Huh.
Right? So other kind of situations, just be aware of what are some things that put you in high risk that that you're going to have a strong temptation. Like for me, I travel a lot for work.
Oh,
So
that's the worst.
I've got 2 trips at the end of October up to Reno.
Oh, my
I'm going to be
gosh.
there for 3 days apiece. And I know that is going to be very difficult for me.
Yup.
Because when I'm staying at a hotel and they've got their breakfast in the morning, or they've got cookies sitting out, or
Yup.
they've got all these things, or if I'm going to a training, they've got all this, donuts and all that stuff, it's going to be incredibly difficult.
Yeah, and you're hitting on something, because I'm thinking about when I used to travel. Boredom Boredom
Right.
is a situation
Yeah.
where if I have nothing going on, I feel like I need to do something, and eating or ordering food or something like that feels like it's an agenda item. I feel like I
Now-
did something.
Great thought. Now let's go into the internal.
Yeah.
Okay, so those were all external
Okay.
vulnerabilities.
Places, people, and situations are
Right.
external. Okay.
Internals are going to be your thoughts and your emotions.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so you just hit on the emotional part. You hit on the boredom,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have to be aware of what kind of emotional state can we be in that is going to
Wow.
put us at high vulnerability to returning to old behaviors.
Yep.
So boredom is one.
Oh, I can tell you another one right now. Off the top of my head, I
Okay.
already know it. Another one is anytime I get into like self-pity. Anytime I'm like, oh, I had a hard day today. And I get home and I worked late and like everybody, my family got to have a nice warm dinner and I get home late and it's in the fridge. And it's like, well, am I going to eat this cold reheated casserole or am I going to order some Burger King like a champion? And I get into this self-pity and then I'm
Yep.
like, you know what? I've earned it. And it's
Yeah.
like, I'm going to take care of me because nobody else will. And it's like, I'm poisoning myself. Like,
Right.
how is that a victory lap? But
Right.
I do that anytime I feel jilted or I feel like I didn't get what I want or I did something and I'm not being appreciated, then Jim's victory lap is Jim's going to,
Poor
pig out
Jim
on
needs a Whopper.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, not one. no, because it's 2 for $6. Those damn deals, that's how they get you. Pick any 2 for $5. Killing me. So those
Okay.
emotions are a big part of it.
Yes. So, and here's the other thing too: is it becomes really easy to identify negative emotions as
Yeah.
being something that triggers you, right? But positive emotions can do the same thing.
Yeah.
Like for me, positive emotions can be very dangerous if I'm talking
Oh,
about
celebrate.
sugar.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was again part of my culture. Like how we grew up, we celebrated everything by going out to eat.
Yeah.
Right? Everything was all right.
You got
we
A's
gotta-
on your report card.
Let's go out to eat. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
Oh, wow.
food is always paired with celebration. So
Yeah.
if something happens or I'm really excited about something, that immediately is where my brain goes to.
Man.
Right?
No, that's totally true. And that's something we've said to people in the rehab too, is like somebody that's dealing with alcohol. They'll tell us, hey, alcohol is how I mourn. Alcohol is how I get through boredom and silences. Alcohol is how I celebrate. Alcohol is how I grieve. Alcohol is how I win.
Yep.
And it just shows up everywhere in life. And then the wire and fire together
Yep.
is just, it feels weird. And another point, this won't apply very much to my particular work in October, but for a lot of folks that are trying to quit something like alcohol, sex is very difficult, especially in that first year, because they associate having sex with having drinks. And so it's like, oh, well, you got to have cocktails to loosen up, or you got to be the right amount of tipsy or whatever. And sober sexuality is actually a really big part of the work that we do too.
Right.
Which is why you're always having sex with our patients when they're sober. That's that hands-on.
Oh, hey, somebody laughed.
I'm killing it. Thank you, Shay. You can come every week.
Yeah.
We're going to call you in every week. It's just be
Jim's
the laugh
personal
track.
woo girl.
Boom. There you go, Jim. Also, for the board, Nick has not had sex with any of our
Thank you. Thank you.
that I know of.
And the last one is thoughts.
Thoughts.
So becoming aware, this is probably the most difficult.
Okay.
Is becoming aware of your thinking patterns, right? Becoming aware of one of the things that you had said was, I earned this, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a thought right there that leads to high vulnerability.
Yes.
So becoming aware of your thought patterns can be very difficult. And this is actually, we're going to spend more time on this later because we're going to get into some CBT, some cognitive behavioral therapy.
Nice.
And a lot of that has to do with recognizing thoughts, because a lot of times we have automatic responses to things.
Yes.
That lead to an emotion, that lead to a behavior, but it happens so quickly we don't even realize we thought about it.
Yeah.
It just happens that quickly.
Yeah.
So part of what we're going to be doing is working on slowing down that thought process, identifying distorted thinking patterns, identifying unhealthy thoughts like that one you just had,
Yeah.
and be able to recognize it. So that the next time that you have that thought, you're going to remember this.
And
because
I'll
you're
know.
going to remember this conversation.
Yeah, that
and
this
you're gonna
isn't
remember
real.
this is-
It's just inside of me. So today we've covered triggers, which is identifying vulnerabilities, ways that I could fail in October, identifying it ahead of time. That way when it happens, we have a game plan for how I'm going to address that. And so from here, it sounds like the homework is probably going to be sussing that out in more depth.
Yeah, so basically, everybody, what we want you to do is we want you to be able to write down some ideas and really think hard. Don't be surface level, really kind of get deep in identifying some of these vulnerabilities.
Externals, people, places, and situations.
Yep.
Internals, emotions, thoughts, I think were the two.
Yep.
Okay. And so making a list of that, whether that's on notebook paper or whether you jump into our Patreon, we're going to have some worksheets there that can help guide that work. And then you can see my answers. I'm going to be the guinea pig all month long. Nick's going to post homeworks and I'm going to complete them and then post them. So you guys can actually see, okay, these are Jim's real answers. So it'll be kind of an example anyway, kind of like the answers at the back of a math book, except these won't be right.
Right.
These will not be accurate. Very exciting.
Cool. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will discuss Why Do I Cry? You're listening to Pod Therapy.
Why do you cry? To this week's Theraproducer sponsor is Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop. Nathan was an American actress, singer, dancer, and vaudevillian. During a career that spanned 45 years, she attained international stardom as an actress in both musical and dramatic roles, as a recording artist, and on the concert stage. Respected for her versatility, she received a Juvenile Academy Award, a Golden Globe Award, and a special Tony Award. The name's almost in there. Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop was the first woman to win the Grammy Award for Album of the Year for her live recording Nathan at Carnegie Hall in 1961. If you'd like to join Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop, or if you know who the hell he really is, you can go down to patreon.com/therapy, comment on this episode for as little as $1, and join us in supporting the show. Again, that's patreon.com/therapy.
All right, we're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy. Our next question, why do I cry?
Hey guys, I just arrived in Texas from Toronto and walked from my hotel to a Starbucks. I wouldn't say the trip was hard on my body or mind, but now I feel a completely uncontrollable urge to cry. This has never happened before, and all I can find on Google are links to get help. I don't feel sad. I am not clinically depressed, but the internet is telling me I might be. Have you ever encountered this before? Any suggestions on controlling this urge in a healthy way? Anonymous. It's a good question.
That is a good question.
You ever uncontrollably cry, Nick?
Yeah, every Sunday morning.
On the drive here?
Starts about 10:30. Yeah.
I can't figure it out. I mean, I'm like not depressed. I don't know what it is. I just do it. I've seen this before, and I've seen it where I think that this is what can baffle the writer is if you ask them, why are you sad? If you ask them what's going on, sometimes the answer is not evident. And we're like, well, I don't know. Like, I'm just on a business trip. Like, I'm not contemplating anything. But somehow my emotions are taking me to the space of just despair. And sometimes I think that's true for us, where the emotion seems to show up before the cause. And so we don't have that cause-effect thing of, I saw this commercial, now I feel sad. Or I got a letter from somebody that's hurting, and now I feel this way. Sometimes you just feel the state of that energy. Now, what I would probably be interested in, because I know you and I subscribe very much to CBT, our theory is usually there is something that was there. Mm-hmm. It's just invisible to you. And if we got into a therapeutic dialogue, we might actually shine a light and discover what was invisible to you. But I will still concede that there are absolutely times when a person just feels emotions and they just pour out of us. And I don't think that's unhealthy. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with you. I have seen that happen. I've seen times, and Nick, I know you've seen this in your work, where the patient's sitting on the couch and we're not even talking about anything emotional and they just start crying. Mm-hmm. And those hot tears just start flowing. And for them, it could just be the moment of exposure that I'm even talking to this other human and that you're here to help me. And there's just something about this that's the dam is breaking and just truth is falling out, even if I haven't really said anything, but just emotions are there. Right. So to the writer, my first take is I just don't think emotions necessarily have to have a cause. I think more often than not they do. Mm-hmm. But in this case, I don't think there's anything wrong with you. I just think that we can just be emotionally, outpouring sometimes, and it's just a raw take.
Well, and that's what's interesting, too, because the writer says that they don't feel sad.
Yeah.
They just feel like they need to cry.
It's just coming out.
So,
oh, boy, I get that, though.
Right, and so I guess one of the things that I was kind of
just to cry.
Yeah, I mean, I one of the things that I was kind of thinking of is how difficult it is for people to actually be able to recognize emotion,
Oh, yeah.
especially for males. That
Yeah.
seems to be the pattern.
Stereotypically.
Right,
yeah.
because as we're raised to kind of purge those emotions.
Right.
Like, it's not socially acceptable for a male to say, I feel sad or I feel hurt.
Right.
It is socially acceptable for a male to say, I'm pissed off. I'm angry.
Yeah.
Right? So then
Yeah.
we automatically get programmed that way, which I think is why we see so many men with anger issues.
Yes.
And I always like to say there's no real such thing as, it's not like having an anger management issue. It's
Yeah.
an emotional management issue.
Right.
Because anger's typically a secondary emotion. Anger is the response to a primary emotion that's now dealt with. Right?
So that's a good point to the writer, because while we don't know the details of the situation necessarily, what you're talking about, Nick, it can be true where you've repressed emotion for so long that all of a sudden your body is done. And it
Right.
just comes out, and you're not necessarily triggered by anything. And I have seen that before.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that was the point you were making there, but I think that it does flow naturally to what you said.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, so I would first initially look at maybe there's something a little bit deeper that just, it's kind of below the surface.
Yeah.
Right? It's just something that subconsciously we've kind of suppressed and not really aware of.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, it may not be a bad idea to actually talk to somebody about that. Maybe going in for one session with a therapist just for kind of an assessment, just to talk.
I think it could be kind of a red flashing warning light that maybe something's going on. But I mean, as a general human experience, I think a lot of us have just had moments where we're just caught up in emotion and we don't necessarily know why. Sure. Shay, you're nodding to that.
I had that last week. I was like,
Did you write this?
No.
Were you in
No,
Texas?
it's funny. I was just like, he was on shift. I've actually been crying for the past 2 weeks, nonstop, actually.
Okay.
I ripped up my ankle playing basketball.
Oh,
so
wow.
I'm hobbled
Ouch.
up, and I've just been very upset about that. But yeah, so he was gone. I had to go stay at my mom's house, and I was just like, I'm so sad. I just want to cry.
Now, in your case, it sounds like there was a situation that was
Yeah.
bigger, which is I'm physically injured.
Yeah.
I miss my husband. I'm feeling vulnerable, and so that kind of wore on you quite a bit.
Yeah, for sure. But there's times all the time where I'll just be like, man, I'm sad, and I don't know why I'm sad.
You don't even know where it comes from.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is why, Nick, I'm not surprised that when that person typed it into Google, depression does come up.
Right, sure.
Which it can be a sign of depression
Sure.
to feel sullen and to feel low and to want to cry, but to not necessarily be able to point to it.
Right. Now, so here's another question, too, because we've talked about this before as far as a clinically significant amount of distress.
Yeah, somebody
So-
actually wrote us on Twitter about
Right.
that.
Yeah. So with this, if to our writer, it sounds like you don't feel sad, you don't feel depressed. The only thing that's really going on is you feel the urge to cry.
And you're crying.
So cry, and is that causing a significant amount of emotional distress? If it's not,
Yeah.
then what's the problem? Right?
Well,
I mean, then you're
and
just...
that's not to
then you're
minimize
just-
it. If
No,
it
no,
bothers
yeah,
you, you're
definitely.
allowed to tell us.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of getting the sense here, it's more of a question like, should I be concerned? Right?
Yeah,
And if
right.
that's the question, should I be concerned? Then I think, well, if you're not already concerned and you just cry occasionally for
Right.
no apparent reason, and it's not causing you any kind of significant distress in your life, it's not
Yeah.
affecting the way that you work, you're emotionally okay, well, then maybe that's just something you do.
And this is us, writer, again, not to minimize it, but one of the things that Nick and I hear all the time is a lot of people are very scared that something's wrong with them. And so a lot of the time, what we're initially doing is to take a look at them and oftentimes doing exactly what Nick just did, which is to say, well, let's compare what you're going through and ask, what are the consequences of it? How is this interfering with your life at work? Are you crying during meetings? Are you not able to perform your job with your family? Are you crying at the dinner table and this is confusing people? Is this hurting you in consequences? And if it is, then we're like, yeah, something's wrong. Let's fix this. Mm-hmm. If it's not, we usually consider that what we call subclinical, which isn't to say that you're not allowed to talk to us. It isn't to say you're not allowed to work on it, but it is to say, hey, we're not worried about this right now. We'll monitor it with you, but there's nothing, quote unquote, wrong with you. Right. And that's something that I would imagine, Andrew, you've seen a ton in the field too. Whenever you show up on the scene of people that are going through something and they're like, well, don't leave me. You guys, and you're like, we are first responders, dude. We're not going to babysit you all day. But a lot of times you probably find yourself telling people, this doesn't reach the threshold that I need to do something with you.
Sure.
but I still want to validate you. Like, you know, we're not here to mess with you until you don't matter. But I imagine that's something you guys have bumped into a lot in the field.
Yeah, a ton. We got to think from their point of view a lot of times. Like,
Right.
you know, something has happened where they called 911 because they feel it's an emergency.
Right.
Where we get there, and of course, us in our field, we're like, we've got a very different sense of what's an emergency and what's actually happening than some people, right? I mean, we just came off of a 4-victim car wreck where 2 kids died.
Jeez.
And we come to this person, but that may very well be the worst thing that's ever happened to him.
Right.
You know, you got to think that exactly.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of times where we think, you know, I saw a dog outside and I remembered 10 years ago I had a dog and it made me really sad.
Right.
And so, you know, it just making stuff up here, but
yeah, you resonate with that idea.
Exactly.
That it's important
we
to them.
especially if this is like 3 a.m. on the back end of our 48-hour shift, and we're
getting
thinking
to the end
like,
of the patients.
are you kidding me right now?
Right.
But,
cat in a tree.
But you don't want to sit here and berate them because it may very well be, like we were saying, objectively the worst thing that's ever happened to them.
Yeah.
Being able to hone that empathy,
exactly,
I think is a big
and
part
so
of that. Yeah.
you know, we train ourselves a lot to. Well, it goes along with the be professional thing, but put ourselves in that person's shoes where. Exactly. So
yeah, just appreciating the common humanity.
Right.
And
exactly.
A frightened person is
and so
something
we're
we
never going to go in and say, "Are you kidding me right now?"
Right. Right.
But we're objectively looking at the situation and talk them
through it.
Exactly.
And so, Ryder, I think that we want to definitely, be the same way that Andrew is to his folks, which is to say, this does not sound like an emergency.
Sure.
That's not to say it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. This does matter, and we're concerned that you're concerned, and we definitely want you to feel better. But I think that we want to make sure we're doing our job to tell you what Nick said, which is, hey, this does not look like the kind of thing that we would call clinical depression, but we want you to keep an eye on it. If this is the first time that's happened and you just find hot tears in an airport, okay, absorb that, reflect on it, do some meditating on it, monitor yourself. Because if you keep seeing that over and over and over again, there could be something going on.
Right.
And, especially there's such situations where there's a hormonal situation.
Right.
We've seen that before where just hormones are happening and biochemicals are transferring and all of a sudden tears are falling out and we're like, what is wrong with me? Why am I sobbing?
That could be from a change of medication, something like that.
Yeah.
Could be a lot of different things. So I guess ultimately another thing that I always like to encourage people to do is to take a look at, if you identify that this isn't a problem, identify some conditions under which it would be a problem. So you're prepared if, like, let's say, it's not a problem right now, but if it doesn't change in the next couple months, if I'm still experiencing this, then maybe it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
Or if I notice depressed feelings going along with it, then I know it's a problem. Then you've got some kind of threshold for which you can make decisions.
I absolutely agree. So to the writer, the homework that I'm going to give you is I just want you to monitor this. And if this turns into something that you're seeing over and over and over again, or it's starting to interfere with work life or your ability to function and just kind of solve your day, I do want you to check in with a therapist. And I hope that we can just be an informer to you and triage you for right now and say, monitor this. If you see it getting worse, check in with a therapist. They may even want you to do some blood work if it's something that they suspect may be hormones. Mm-hmm. But for right now, just monitor it. Mm-hmm. But, to all humans out there, we are emotional beings. And I think that one of the things we've done poorly in culture sometimes is we've made it seem like emotions are fundamentally bad and we all need to be like Vulcans and just be always logical. That is not the case. You are an emotional being. You're allowed to just have hot tears and have an emotional reaction, and there's nothing wrong or broken with you if that's the case.
Sure.
Though I do understand this is confounding too.
Yeah, and you hit on it being, if this writer is a male and societally been saying you're not allowed to have these emotions, you're not allowed to cry. Mm-hmm. I work in a very macho field.
Yeah, right.
And a lot of type A personalities, you are not allowed to show emotion or that. So I would reiterate what you guys are saying. If you are a male writer, don't bury it. Don't, keep an eye on it.
Yeah,
definitely.
Very true. Very true. Firefighters cry all the time. They claim it's the smoke. I see right through that.
Go back to the station and hide in a corner and don't let the other dudes see you.
Talking to the guy, I'm like, hey man, come here, bring it in. He's like, Jim, we are literally in a 4-alarm fire right now. No, come on, bud. I see it in your eyes. Okay,
come here, buddy.
A little
come here.
Bring it here.
Okay,
Jim, swing the axe and get us out of here. Eventually. Let's deal with the now.
All right, well, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will discuss gambling addiction. Ooh. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
This week's TheraProducer sponsor is Dr. Ben Dawn. Ben, voiced by Larry Kenny, is the son of Claudius and is the leader and hereditary lord of the Thundercats.
True story.
His adventures are shown from childhood to adulthood on Third Earth and New Thundera, together with his friends and followers, the Thundercats. If you would like to join Dr. Ben Don, hi-oh! You can go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up. Again, that's www.patreon.com/therapy.
We're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy. Our next question is about gambling addiction.
Very opportune. Hey guys, I absolutely have a gambling addiction. I believe that this email is the first step towards solving that problem. I have drunkenly sent you an email about an unrelated issue in the past, and while it's true that was a different issue, I believe it all comes down to an ability to regulate myself. I don't have much of a question. I honestly believe that telling you that I have a problem is a good first step. I suppose the only thing worthy of discussing is what's next. This part probably doesn't need to be said because telling you all this tells me all that I need to know. I need to stop gambling, even a day at a time, and I need to talk to someone about all the things that are a part of this. I've listened to you guys for a long time, but I haven't heard you talk about gambling specifically, so hopefully this rambling message can help someone. Also, don't let me take this one back. While the last one was just complaining for complaining's sake, I believe that this email should be discussed. I love you guys so much for all that you do. And I think that we're going to keep the name anonymous on this one because I wasn't sure whether or not we should do it, but we're with you. So we'll call this one Gambler Anonymous. I think we'll probably be safe. So good question and very opportune. Yeah. Welcome to Sober October, buddy. This is your chance.
Yep.
Join us.
This is a good
This is the time to do it. So you should firstly take a look at those external triggers.
Yes.
Yes, and those internal triggers.
Yes.
And get on Patreon and do the damn homework.
And I think, and what episode did we have Sydney on?
Oh,
I think
goodness.
It was
in year one. Yeah, it was
like
very
our fourth
early.
episode.
Sydney Smith, Dr. Sydney Smith now.
Yeah. She is the gambling expert down here in Las Vegas, and she does an amazing job. So she would actually be, I would go back and listen to that episode. I think we actually have her contact info in that episode too, I believe.
Yeah.
And if you're
she runs the Rise
Center for Recovery.
That's
here
it.
In
Rise
Las
Center
Vegas.
for Recovery.
Yep. And she's done a lot of work. She travels all over the United States doing, speaking engagements and everything.
Right.
She's really good at gambling addiction. So, good friend of the show. You can probably reach out to her, but find anybody in your area.
There's always going to be a Gamblers Anonymous, and there's very likely going to be some kind of gambling treatment program. But here's the thing, Ryder, that I think we have to shine a light on, and I just want to congratulate you on. When Nick and I are assessing anybody for addiction stuff, the very first question that we have as a clinical team is we're trying to figure out what is their awareness of this problem, right? Are they in, denial, so to speak, or what we clinically describe as pre-contemplation? Or are they aware of the problem? And in this situation, what I'm reading that I think is very important is you saying, I recognize this is a problem. I'm writing to you so that there is an artifact of this, so that hopefully you will read it back to me, so that you will comment on it, so that I will feel some sense of accountability. A human in the world knows now, and now I have admitted it. And God, that is so profound psychologically. To admit something to yourself and to somebody else has this profound changing effect. It's like this bookmark on your mind, and it makes it that much harder to slip back under the covers of denial and having no clue about this problem again.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely the first step. And then the next question then is, once you've identified that, are you willing to address it? Right. And what are you willing to do to address it? Because then the next thing is, people will say, well, yeah, I know my gambling is a problem. I'm just not ready to do anything about it yet.
Right.
Or I'm willing to do something about it as long as it's not too much of an inconvenience.
Yes.
And that's one of the things working in addiction that I can tell you is anything that you do to address an addiction is going to be an inconvenience.
Yes.
It's going to be a lot of work. And that's one of the things like with this Sober October for everybody listening, anybody who's making a life change. And I write about this a little bit in the stuff that I've put together is how it's so difficult to make a change because we have patterns of behavior, right? And those patterns of behavior have made our lives comfortable. We have comfort zones. We have we feel most comfortable when we're in situations in which we can predict outcomes, right? But unfortunately, when you are making a big life change, like you're changing your eating patterns, or you're getting clean and sober, or you're starting an exercise program, you naturally are coming outside of your comfort zone.
Yes.
And that is very difficult, because that means that you can't predict outcomes of situations. This is totally new to you.
Yes.
And it becomes really easy to slip back into old patterns of behavior. So I think, number one, you've definitely let us know, so there's some accountability there.
Yes.
Find a professional to talk about this with.
Yes.
Any addiction specialist. If you can find somebody that specializes in gambling, that's going to be
better.
best.
But don't say that, because you can't find perfect, that you're not allowed to have progress.
Right.
You do something, Ryder, and that is something that we are going to hold you accountable to.
And then Gamblers Anonymous. I know a lot of folks, probably a lot of our listeners too, especially, are going to have issues with the anonymous meetings for the religious component to it. And that definitely makes sense. I've been to a ton of AA meetings, NA meetings, and that's always something that I kind of cringe a little bit every time I sit through those.
Right.
But you have to kind of see through that to get the bigger message.
Yes.
You can definitely kind of weed through some of that in your mind. If you can find a GA meeting, that's great. Just Google Gamblers Anonymous.
Yeah.
Google that, see what resources are in the area. If you don't have that, I guarantee you would probably be accepted at an NA meeting.
Yes. Oh, yeah,
Narcotics
absolutely.
Anonymous. They'll definitely accept you in that too. So find some sort of group that you can. The fellowship is the big thing. That's the thing that people really get out of that. And having other people that are going through the similar thing that you can kind of draw from experience and wisdom.
So, Ryder, what I believe, when I look at you clinically, from what I'm gleaning from your email, it's clear to me that you've stepped into what Nick and I would describe as a stage of change, which we call contemplation. So you're no longer in pre-contemplation, which is denial, not even having a clue about this. You're in contemplation, which is what it feels like to stand up and look down and realize, oh my God, the Grand Canyon's been there all along, and I didn't see it because I was laying on my belly and I had my face against the ground and I just thought the earth was flat, right? So now I stand up and I see this huge problem in front of me. I don't know what to do about it. I don't know how I'm going to cross this canyon, but I can see it. The next stage is preparation. And preparation would look like you walking up next to this canyon, sizing it up, and starting to brainstorm ways that you might change. And that is what we're doing for you right now. What does it look like for you to set 3 things in your life that you could explore? What does it look like to look at Gamblers Anonymous? What does it look like for you to look at therapists in your area? What does it look like for you to do Sober October with us and take a shot at this? I want you to brainstorm. Now, that's not you moving your feet yet. That's just you brainstorming, and that would be evidence of you stepping into the next solid stage of change. From there, we start to lead into action. But I want to circle back to something Nick said, because I want this for all the listeners. This is Jim getting on a soapbox for a minute, because there's something that actually clinically bothers me. It is true. Alcoholics Anonymous and the entire 12-step traditions of Narcotics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous, Sex Addict Anonymous, it is very typical inside of their tradition to discuss what they call a higher power. Okay, It used to be much more overtly religious. They have since scaled it back quite a bit, but those fellowships still have that as part of their 12 steps. They acknowledge that I could not solve this problem inside of myself, and I needed to surrender myself to something bigger than myself, and they usually have code words that sound like religion. It is unacceptable to me as a clinician, and Nick is very obviously an atheist, and we've worked together hand in hand, and our clients have tried to split us, and it's never worked, because we do not accept the excuse that because you have this worldview that there is no God, that therefore you have to die in your addiction. If the United States Congress opens up every single session with a prayer, that has never stopped an atheist from walking into that Congress and demanding rights that they know they should be entitled to and demanding change that they want to see in their communities. And the same should be for you. I want you to be selfish. I want you to walk into any room that has anything that could possibly improve your life, and regardless of the other humans that are in that room, and regardless of what their first step says, regardless of any references to God, I want you to sit down, and I want you to acknowledge that you have a problem, and try to listen to the ways that these other humans have changed their lives, okay? And there is something there for you. But I have seen lots of people do absolutely nothing, using their worldview as their convenient excuse to die in their addiction. Unacceptable to me. You must do something. And if you go into the fellowships, you will see there are agnostic AAs and atheist AAs, and they break into those groups too.
There's smart recovery.
Smart recovery.
Which is completely, they've taken
That's
all of that out.
intentionally
And then
unreligious.
I know a lot of atheists that will go to an AA meeting and they just kind of, in their own mind, they just kind of, they change some of this stuff.
Yes.
As far as like, the higher power, they identify the higher power as being the group.
Yes.
Right. So then that kind of becomes their higher power. Sometimes people will, like with God, redefine that as being standing for good, orderly direction.
Yes.
There's all sorts of different ways that people can.
And we're not just being rhetorical,
that.
and again, the writer obviously didn't have a problem with this, but it's something that we bump into a lot.
Right.
And for us, it is just another denial mechanism for a person not to have to change. And at the end of the day, guys, for us, it's not about this concept of higher power or God. What the theory, why that works, is because if you keep looking at yourself and saying, all I have to do is try and I can fix this. All I have to do is just really want this and I can fix this. We, as clinical professionals who literally earn our living helping people fix, know it's not so easy just to reach inside of yourself and have the answer. Mm-hmm. You've got years and years and years of neurons that have wired together, lifestyles that have compounded, patterns that you can be completely oblivious to. You need an external helper. And that is how addiction gets solved. That's why insurance covers this. And so going to 12-step is not you needing God. It's you recognizing I am insufficient internally to just make this problem go away. I need other human beings. I need a tribe who are also trying to fix this. And together as a group, there's a way for me to get healthy. That's all it is. Mm-hmm. Come in with that mentality and you'll have all you need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have much more limited experience than you guys have with this type of thing. But in my limited experience, when people say that, I don't want to go to the 12-step meeting because of this, it is just an excuse.
Sure.
It's a reason to not, it's one more reason to not go.
Yeah.
And it's a nice thing. People don't talk to me about their addictions, but people do talk to me about their atheism.
Sure.
And this comes up as part of that.
Right.
And if you got the work to do, you go somewhere where you can do the work.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
If you have cancer and the only hospital in your neighborhood is a Catholic-run hospital, are you going to not go? You're like, well, they have crosses on the wall. Screw that shit. Get in there and get healthy. What are you doing? You don't believe in any of this anyway. What do you care? Like, those are decorations. They don't matter to you at all. What you like is the part where you don't die. Like, do that. So anyway, but I'll get off my soapbox. But no,
I hope we did a good job of answering the question that he didn't ask.
This is us telling you to go forward, man. So brainstorm some ways that you could continue to improve on this problem. We're going to hold you accountable to it. And you know what? I'll even push you a step further. I want to see an email. I want you to write us.
Yeah, please do.
I want you to follow up. You obviously know how to get a hold of us. You've actually written us twice, and 3 times, actually. And so I want you to write us back and tell us, all right, guys, I heard the episode, and here are the 3 things that I'm looking at doing. That's all I need from you. You don't even have to make a commitment to do them yet. Just show me 3 good ideas.
Yeah.
Show me that you've looked into it.
Yeah, we will reply to that. Absolutely.
Absolutely, we will.
So, all right. End of the show. Time for apologies, Patreons, reviews, announcements.
Yeah.
As far as announcements, obviously we're doing Sober October.
Sober October. If you're not already a Patreon, this is the month to do it. You can quit us in November. But for as little as $1, guys, you can jump into our Patreon, watch Jim go through the entire addiction treatment process for my own stuff, and read Nick's personally written materials that are going to be workshops and worksheets and homeworks and some really cool stuff to do a deep dive in yourself, whether you're trying to stop using a substance or stop eating unhealthy, or whether you're just trying to have real meaningful change in your life, whether you're trying to deal with your addiction to anger or your compulsion towards sadness or whatever it is, there's something there for you. So we definitely want to encourage you to be a part of that. Other announcements, fantasy football is going just well. I am not doing great. I'm playing Brian Lehman's Philly Freudians, which is my favorite name of the league, by the way. I thought that he killed that. He spelled Freud with a PH. And you're playing against Steve Young, which is my second favorite name in the league. Yeah, it's actually pretty competitive. Stuart. Yeah, so I really want you to beat him, by the way.
So far, it's close. It's really close.
I'm rooting for you.
Really close. And Smitty messaged me earlier this week saying that he forgot to look at his lineup this week, so he's gonna get destroyed, I think, by Andrea.
Good. Yeah, I'm rooting for Andrea. She came into the show. Smitty's been on the show too. Wow, we've had a lot of guests now. We've almost met probably 10% of our entire Patreon community.
I think Smitty was on the episode where my mail was read. So
oh, really?
Really?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I forgot that you wrote into the show. Very good. How's that going, by the way?
Good.
Yeah? You kind of settling into your role? And because your email was about impostership, feeling like you're not equipped to do what you're supposed to do. Now you've been into the role now for about a year.
Just like 2 years now.
Yeah, 2 years.
So we're just over our hurdle of all of the stuff that stressed me out last year. It was funny you were talking about the triggers and stuff. My job was definitely a trigger last year for unhealthy eating. Unfortunately,
that will happen.
But I think just the time and settling into the role, getting more confidence. Yeah,
cool.
It's been a lot better. I think he would say it's been better too.
Oh. Loads.
You don't feel like an imposter as a firefighter, do you? Because that would be not very effective.
Oh, man.
Should I go in? I shouldn't go in. You guys should go.
So
I don't want to do it.
He just got his hazmat certification.
Oh, okay.
So he deals with all the scary chemicals and stuff.
Oh, fun.
And he just got it. And he was on shift the other day and he messages me and he's like, I'm about to go down on this hazmat call. It's this.
Oh,
and I was
gosh.
like, why you?
Yeah.
I was like, you're with
sick.
someone, right?
Lose your cell phone, yeah.
Like, you're with people that have done this longer than you, right?
That's funny. Wow, so she's the one telling you you're an imposter.
Yeah.
It's always good to have your wife on the other side saying, I don't know if you've thought about this, but what if you're not good enough?
Yeah.
Thanks, hon. Call you when I get home.
I think we all second guess ourselves in our jobs, right?
Yes.
But,
Yeah.
It's more of a safety issue.
That's fair. That's a slightly different thing. Well, good. I'm glad to hear that you're doing well.
Yeah.
And so other announcements, I do have a very brief apology. I'd like to apologize to Dolphins. Dear Dolphins.
the Dolphins.
I'm sorry that when I heard that more than 50 dolphins washed ashore a beach dead, that I accused you of being part of a doomsday alien cult. That was insensitive. I don't know what caused your deaths, but it probably wasn't a cult. But I can't rule it out.
You can't.
I don't know that for sure.
That's a typical apology from Jim.
That's, yeah.
I'm sorry about doing this. But, I may be
But
right.
I'm not wrong. You don't know for sure. I'm just saying I'm sorry if it hurt your feelings, Dolphins.
Oh,
You've been
God.
through enough. So that's my only apology for the week. I'm certain I have
good
in no way
job.
hurt anybody. Oh, that's not to say that there hasn't been other bad tweets. It's to say that's the only one I remember.
I want to read these emails from the dolphin community that really gotten after you.
Yeah. Thankfully, I'm not a big enough deal that Pete has noticed. Or SeaWorld's going to call and be like, this was hurtful and ignorant. So anyway, that's the only other big announcement. Okay. And usually the first week of the month, we are going to thank all of our Patreons. As it so happens, we have been so fixated on Sober October, that's the excuse I'm sticking to.
We kind of forgot.
So
next week.
Patreons, you're going to have plenty of love on Patreon this month. You're finally going to get your money's worth. Good for you. And but in week 2, we will definitely thank everybody. And so this gives you an opportunity. If you're hearing this and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm about to sign up because I'm totally going to get in on all this Sober October stuff, get in because we will totally announce you as a new TherapAL, Therapod, or Theraproducer, or ex officio.
Shayla, would you like to announce our newest Therapod?
Ooh. Who is our newest Therapod?
Is it me?
Yes.
And for $5 more, it could also be Andrew. You got any cheddar on you? Join the cult. So you are our newest Therapod.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your donation.
Nice.
We
I got
use
my
it to
dinosaur
do the
gif.
thing.
I'm happy about it.
Nice. Yeah. I'm so proud of that. That is like my favorite thing. I'm so glad that exists. So if you want to know what the hell we're talking about, follow us on Twitter at PodTherapyGuys, and then donate $5 on Patreon, and you too can have your very own shout out with awesome dinosaur cult thing.
We've never announced our Twitter handles.
Oh,
So-
you announce mine all the time. Every time I say something offensive, you let people know how they could give me feedback,
Which
they often do.
The Dolphins right
Thanks for
into
that.
this one.
Yeah, the Dolphins are coming. Yeah, the Miami Dolphins are like, F you.
At Sin City Shrink for Jim.
Yeah.
I'm at Nick.Tangeman.
Yes.
I
don't think
not
there's no
original.
dot, it's underscore.
Oh, damn it. Now I have to look.
It's at Nick_Tangeman.
All right, we'll have that for later. I'll check.
I know his Twitter handle. It's at Nick_Tangeman, TANGEMAN. Tangeman is how you pronounce that.
Yep.
And I'm just at Sin City Shrink. No underscores or anything like that.
And we especially want to thank our bosses, the Elite 8 mysterious and shrouded Illuminati members of our fan clubs, the Theraproducers. Thank you, Smitty Scoop, Jake Schneider, Robert Brownie Jr., Ment, Chairman of the Board, Kayla Lansbury, David Data Scoop Violon, Judy Schneider, Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop, and Dr. Ben Don, and ex officio board members, Ellie O'Dare and Dan Martin.
If you would like to hear this episode uncut, unedited, and hear our extra bonus content with our 2 guests today, and enjoy our Sober October project, you can go to www.patreon.com/therapy and support us for as little as $1. And thank you all for supporting mental health. That's all the time that we've got for this week's session. We want to thank our landlords, the Ice Cream Social Podcast, and our guests who contributed to our show today, Shay and Andrew. We really appreciate it. Remember, Pod Therapy isn't something you should keep all to yourself. Help us reach others by opening this episode's description in your podcast app and copying and pasting the link provided into your social media. Don't forget, you can find us at facebook.com/podtherapy, on Twitter at PodTherapyGuys, and at patreon.com/therapy.
Do you want to submit a question to the show? Ask anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. I'm Nick Tanchman,
the prophet of the dolphins.
Thanks, and we'll see you for your appointment next week.